Hello and welcome to TV Talks, the show where I take a look at both the good and the bad of what television has to offer. And now, all God's creatures, fresh off the grill, come on down to Mr. Meaty where friends meet to eat meat. I'm gonna be honest, Mr. Meaty is one of Nickelodeon's most controversial shows. I know that's kind of a bold statement considering they're home to Rocko's Modern Life and Ren and Stimpy, but this is actually right up there with them, albeit not very highly regarded as those ones were. When you look at Mr. Meaty, most of the things that you can find are people saying that it's terrifying, it's disturbing, it's weird, it's uncomfortable, it's not suitable for kids. And boy, are they right. But we'll get to that later. So, it would kind of amaze some of you who actually didn't know that this is branded as a Nicktoon. It's puppets. Well, I guess puppetry is technically animation, as like you're animating a puppet. It's not a cartoon animation. So I can't fathom why Mr. Meaty is considered a Nicktoon. And a lot of people don't know this, but Mr. Meaty is not really an American production. At least in full. It's the same way where Amazing World of Gumball isn't really a full US cartoon. Like how Gumball is a co-production between United States and the UK, Mr. Meaty was a co-production of Canada and the USA. There we go, Canada. Doesn't that make a lot more sense now? Canada doesn't really have the best reputation when it comes to television because of their lesser strict practices and overall quantity over quality beliefs. Was that the same with Mr. Meaty? Well, we'll see very soon now, won't we? So Mr. Meaty started off in 2002 as a series of shorts, and then in 2005, the shorts were picked up for an actual series. And then the show ended in 2009, kind of. It took a long time to air the second season. The air dates were very spread out and very few and far between. Really, I'd say this thing actually lasted about 2.5 years. This show is about two teenage boys, Josh Redgrove and Parker Dinkelman. The former is a very vain, very arrogant, stuck-up, typical teenage surfer boy, and then the latter is a wide, geeky, smelly, weird, food-loving guy. Basically Owen from Total Drama, but less charming. And boy, I don't even know where to start next, because Mr. Meaty is one of those what shows where every episode breaks its own genre and does something absolutely strange, bizarre, surreal, and fairly creepy. Mr. Meaty is not at all what it appears to be. It appears to be a puppet sitcom at first. And it is, but it quickly turns into a sci-fi fantasy horror show pretty quickly. It's not on the level of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Not at all. I mean, after all, this was on Nickelodeon. But a lot of the show is about Josh and Parker coming across the terrible, weird things that are in Scottsboro Mall, or Mr. Meaty itself. For example, their owner is a parody of Colonel Sanders / Walt Disney, as he was frozen in the freezer, who has been reanimated and is basically abusing all of his co-workers and is this terrible, horrible monster zombie man. There's also demons hidden within medicine stores. There's cannibalistic vegans that own the store across the street. There's one where Josh makes some kind of nose pimple cream that accidentally acts as an acid and burns off one of the Valley Girl's noses, and then they have to make her a new one or fix it. There's one where the evil Walt Disney Colonel Sanders guy makes a burger specifically for girls, Parker eats it and then turns into a girl. And then there's one where Parker gets so embarrassed that he literally dies. Yeah, it's one of those. It's absolutely strange and absolutely bizarre in every single way. Honestly, one of the big criticisms it gets, I think, is warranted, but not for the show itself. One of the main criticisms Mr. Meaty gets is that it's not at all for kids, because it shows a lot of grotesque imagery and fairly frightening characters and visuals and all that kind of stuff, and even just the themes. Granted, a lot of it is done in humor, as it's supposed to be dark comedy or surrealist comedy. But yeah, Mr. Meaty's not for kids. But that's not Mr. Meaty's fault now, is it? It's the network's fault. Nickelodeon promoted this as if it was just another fun kids puppet show. And they aired commercials for this during reruns of Jimmy Neutron's SpongeBob. I remember this very, very well. I loved it as a kid, but a lot of kids didn't, let me tell you. So it's Nickelodeon's fault. If they would have aired it in more teen blocks, I doubt it would have done as well, because I don't think teens really want to watch a puppet show. Or if they just aired it later, maybe it would have worked just fine. But airing it alongside SpongeBob and All Grown Up, Yeah, I don't think that's gonna fly. There's other complaints that the show gets too, like some of the characters are not very well liked. Like the Valley Girls or Josh Redgrove. Josh is a terrible character, honestly. He's no different than all those other annoying, terrible, stuck-up teens you see in real life. And the Valley Girls, admittedly, they're just supposed to be jokes. Like, honestly, a lot of the characters aren't really characters, they're just jokes. And that is something I normally despise, but because a lot of this is not just kind of weird and disturbing, a lot of it is a lot of teen satire culture, I think it works kind of well. It goes the total drama route where all of the teen characters or even kid characters are stereotypes of what we see these days. Granted, it doesn't really flush them out in the way that total drama did in its early days, but the enjoyment is still there, except for Josh. The puppetry is intentionally disturbing. It looks off-putting and weird, but the puppetry itself is actually quite well done. A lot of the sets and props that they have are very, very effective. A lot of the designs still impress me to this day. How's the humor and the writing? Well, the surrealist stuff is very well done a lot of the time. They make it interesting and totally freakishly bizarre. When it comes to the overall humor, then it's very mixed. There's a lot of scatological humor with Parker, of course, and that's just always kind of, par for the course, typical late kid, early teen show, I guess. Mr. Meaty's demographic, like I said, is a bit muddled. But every so often they'll have a joke that really hits home. Specifically with the vegan characters. I mentioned this a lot, but there's a store in the mall that's called Soy What, and there's vegans that run it, obviously, and they poke a lot of fun at them, but not in, mean ways. No, they do it in kind of respectful ways, and everybody gets made fun of here. Nobody is safe. Every group, every belief, always gets hit, at least in some regard. Whether it be subtle or right out there in the open. And then there's just, of course, those typical one-liner jokes that are pretty good. Like in the episode that's kind of the origin story where it tells you how Josh and Parker came to work for the fast food chain. They're helping their first customer and Josh tells the customer, "Hey dude, the food is way better at Burrito Explosion." Just a couple things like that. Never really laugh out loud moments, but always, chuckle-worthy. There's no real outright groaner jokes, they're just, oh, alright. So the humor is definitely its weakest part along with the characters. But the atmosphere and surrealism definitely makes up for it. Yeah, I'm gonna go there. I like Mr. Meaty. Granted, I liked it a lot more as a kid, but now that I'm older, watching it, it's okay. Not bad. Way overhated if you ask me. Honestly, when they start getting into the story stuff later on, that's when it kind of starts to lose me. Like they start having a story arc of Josh and Parker trying to leave Mr. Meaty and start their own movie. And then in the end of the show, they actually do. Which, by the way, the finale was way too rushed and didn't really end a lot of the themes that they actually had. Wasn't too big of a fan of that. But anyways, especially the first season, it's a lot of fun and very, very creative. Again, not for kids, and I understand that a lot of people hold a grudge because of Nickelodeon's marketing for it. But for me, I'm gonna give it the Archibald seal of approval. What did you guys think of Mr. Meaty? Comment below, let me know. And I'll see you guys next week.
Good night, everybody.